Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Brickyard podcast going over the NBA Finals. The Celtics, officially NBA champions. We also go over the legacies, the impact of each player who wins that title, what's next for Luka Doncic, and also going over our final divisions in the NFL, the AFC and NFC East, going over each team and giving our record predictions. But the Celtics, they sealed the deal after 8 years, made it happen.
Yeah, after 8 years, they finally did it. And honestly, one of the most dominant NBA playoff runs we've seen. Because I would look at the Celtics as more of a complete team where Brown and Tatum can get hot. They can go nuclear, but I feel like if you're comparing them to like Steph and Kevin Durant, they're way more efficient in those finals and a lot more explosive, even to a certain extent, Kobe and Shaq with the way they were able to dominate. But they were able to put together a perfect team, and we were talking about it all offseason. As soon as Drew Holiday was traded from the Bucks, we're like, just watch Brad Stevens go ahead and scoop him up, and then we get rid of team spokesman Marcus Smart with the biggest maybe addition by subtraction in NBA history, where you allow Jason and Jalen to be the vocal leaders on that team, and then you also have the calming presence of Al Horford there still. But Drew Holiday is almost like if Al Horford was a guard in a sense, where he's kind of a Swiss Army knife, similar to just a player who maybe he's not going to get you 30 every night, but he'll go ahead and he's a guard who'll get you 10 rebounds. He's going to go out there. Maybe he'll get 11 assists on a given night. And then he's also extremely efficient in the series and started out game five, kind of firing on all cylinders and really set the tone for the Celtics team and gave them probably the mentality that they had been missing. So instead of Marcus Smart jacking up three straight threes or driving into traffic and turning the ball over in a game five, being able to give the Mavericks momentum, you had Drew Holiday, who actually has ball handling skills, was able to get into the lane, get some layups, and really set the tone for the game.
Yeah, and not only that, with Drew Holiday, getting all these offensive rebounds, getting the rebounds on the other end. Game four was kind of a disaster for the Celtics. They got blown out. Worst finals loss in NBA history for a team that wins the finals, but they bounced back. Drew Holiday set the tone for them. Derek White makes some huge shots for him. And then Tatum had a great game. And then Jalen Brown, who ends up being the finals MVP, most consistent player in that finals. Guy who really set the tone, made some really clutch shots for them when the momentum was shifting, and played on both sides of the ball. He guarded Luka. He tired him out, whether it was him or Kyrie. Just setting the tone on defense, and then also facilitating, making big shots when it mattered. So Jalen Brown did great. And then Tatum, got to give him some effort here as well. I mean, he had some games where he had some poor shooting performances, but otherwise, defensively, a masterclass. And then in game five, having 11 assists, 30 points, fifth player to do that in NBA history. He's in conversations with Kobe, with LeBron, with Michael Jordan. So great company there, but just finally getting over the top. And it shows in the NBA what's most important. And I feel like what we're finally seeing here is patience is key. Took 8 years. They made a finals. They made multiple conference finals. Didn't get over the hump, but they got those final pieces, Porzingis and Drew Holiday, and what culminates ultimately in their NBA title. And now, East, who knows what it'll look like the rest of the years.
Yeah, and I think they definitely stack up really well against the other teams in the East. And honestly, I thought Indiana pushed the Celtics a lot more than the Dallas Mavericks, because Indiana, what they did was, okay, maybe we can't score against them in their half court set, but what we can do is play as fast as possible. They were one of the best offenses in the league this year, and they're number one in pace. Where I feel like Luca, sometimes he slowed the game down when Kyrie Irving would struggle to get going. Do you think part of the reason the Mavericks struggled, where Luca isn't a LeBron, where sometimes he knows how to push it and then sometimes he knows when to just pound the ball into the ground? And it seemed like Luca didn't know when to just let Kyrie go in the finals, and he kept trying to take shots. He kept slowing the game down, and you saw Kyrie Irving really couldn't get a rhythm at all.
Yeah, I think especially game five is where it was the most paramount because you'd have tough shooting performances from Kyrie, and then Luca, he would get tired. He would take some bad shots. And we saw that especially in game five, where ultimately they just couldn't really get a rhythm going. Kyrie is somebody who I think will need to take over at certain points in the game. And We saw that throughout the playoffs, but in the finals, just ultimately just couldn't get the rhythm going.
Yeah, don't you think it's so bizarre though with the Celtics themselves as a team where so many people were picking against them, so many people didn't even give them a chance. You had specific people out there picking the Dallas Mavericks to win in 5 when he was basically talking about, okay, Mavericks are going to win in 5 because the Celtics won't be able to adjust to their style of play where there's not really a style of play. It's just Luka dribbles the ball up the court, and the Celtics decided early, okay, we're gonna make him score. We're gonna take away all of your other options, and then we're gonna put Jalen Brown on him, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and all these great defenders, and just tire him out and not double team him to give them wide open threes.
Yeah, and what we would see is we'd have games where first half he scores 25, 30 points. In the second half, you're seeing him score 7 points. He shoots maybe 30% from the field with a bunch of turnovers. So the first half he'd if you could kept them competitive, but second half of the series you saw oftentimes by the time the fourth quarter came, he was just gassed and just couldn't get anything going.
Yeah, and do you think this was more of a situation where the media overstated maybe how good the West was? Or do you think it was more of the situation where the Mavericks were actually that good in the West? They were a Titan that people thought was going to take down the Celtics, where you had 89% of the money on the Dallas Mavericks. However, the Boston Celtics pretty much dominated them in every single game, but one in the game that they lost you could tell that they wanted to win it in Boston, and you could tell that they weren't really trying that hard.
Yeah, I think it's tough because the Mavericks were a great team, and I think that they'll be. I don't know if they'll make the finals next year, but I think they'll at least be competitive. They could probably get some better role players, players who can play defense. But overall, I think they going through the gauntlet of the Western Conference. I think by the time they got to the finals was tough. But for the Celtics, like if we talk about them, everyone talks about how easy their run to the finals was, but at the same time, like who else could they have really gone through? Like the Bucks, they would have been able to take care of the Bucks. And then the Heat with Jimmy Butler, like I don't think Jimmy Butler probably takes a game or two off of them, but I don't think ultimately the Heat overcome the Celtics. Like Celtics had the best runs. Part of it was luck, and the other part of it was they were the best team throughout the entire year. They're the only team that won 60 games all year.
Yeah, they're the only team. They're clearly the best team all season, and it was a year where Denver kind of struggled because they're really missing, I don't know, a bench. They lost Bruce Brown, they lost Jeff Green, who are pretty pivotal in that finals run there, and then everyone was anointing Anthony Edwards as better than Jason Tatum, better than Jalen Brown, where it's like, no, I don't really think that's the case. He's just really the only scorer on his team, so he's going to get touches. I think if Jalen Brown was in the same position, he would also be getting 30 to 40 points a night if he was the sole scorer on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's time that we give Jalen Brown the respect that he deserves because there were parts of the playoffs where Jalen Brown was the best player on their team. And I think it's safe to say that they're both 1A and 1B. Whether you want to say Tatum is better or not, I think Tatum definitely deserves that crown. But ultimately, what I think helped the Celtics get to this final level was them both agreeing to be both 1A and 1B. One person takes over, the other person takes over, and they play together. But ultimately, it's all about the team win. And I think Jalen Brown deserves to be in that conversation for top 15 player in the league now because of how he performed in these playoffs.
Yeah, and he was kind of on a mission ever since he found out he got snubbed from the All NBA team, and a lot of people are scratching their heads. And they're like, "Oh, do you like put him over Devin Booker? Like, do you put him over this guy?" However, like defensively, I feel like he has much more of an impact than Devin Booker does on the court. And then he goes out there and he wins the Larry Bird Trophy in the East, and then in the finals he goes out there and wins the MVP. But it's not necessarily a detriment on Tatum because all you have to do is look at who the best defender is guarding on the Celtics, and it is Jason Tatum. That's the reason why he can go out there and get 11 assists. That's why he had 13 assists in a game. That's why he had his first career triple double and continued to build on that throughout the playoffs in the first game versus the Miami Heat.
Yeah, no, Tatum, the way he's been able to evolve as a playmaker has been exceptional. We saw that with the 11 assist closeout game in the finals. We saw that with the 30-point triple double. So, I mean, Tatum definitely deserves that echelons there, but I do think Jalen Brown deserves his respect. in the NBA circle because he's not like a Robin sidekick sort of figure. I think they complement each other's game really well, better than they did in years past.
Yeah, definitely better than years past because you can tell that Jalen Brown specifically worked on his post game this offseason. He was number one in turnaround jump shots in the post this year. And then he also worked on his ball handling, and it feels like he bulked up. And this was the point where he hit his prime officially. And you can tell he's a lot stronger than he was other years. He's finishing a lot better, and he's not having those egregious mistakes. He still has some times where you're like, what are you doing there? But at the same time, he's not making them time and time and time again in a row. There's a much better flow to this team because really Joe Mazzulla's message is we need to get the best shot possible. And if we drive and kick once, it's not there. Keep driving, keep kicking. And they do all of this with Kristaps Porzingis pretty much being hurt the entirety of the playoffs. And a lot of people were putting the Celtics finals chances on Kristaps Porzingis playing. But the thing is, if you're gonna trade for a 7'3" player that has an injury history, typically that doesn't get better. So I always saw Porzingis as more of a luxury for the Celtics than a actual necessity that you're putting your championship hopes on because he's just been way too fragile in the past to actually think that he could be a key piece on a championship team for an entire playoff run.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate because when he did play, that Celtics team went to another level. You saw it in game 1 against the Mavericks, how exceptional he can be, but unfortunately, for a guy who's 7'3" and what looks like to be 110 pounds, like, he's he's very fragile. He's been fragile his entire career. We saw it in New York, and we saw it in Washington and in Dallas, but, he did definitely elevate the team when he was on the floor, but I know what you're saying. I think, he was more of a luxury. But I want to talk about the role players for them as well, because we talked about Drew Holiday briefly, and then obviously they brought back Al Horford after he had left. He came back. Derek White, those three additions specifically, because now we see Al Horford. He's got a 17-year career now that's captivated with a title. Will he stay or will he go? Looks like he's going to come back for another year. And then Drew Holiday now has two titles with both one with the Bucks and one with the Celtics. Both of these guys feel to me like they have Hall of Fame resumes at this point with how much they've accomplished in this league.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Drew Holiday definitely has a Hall of Fame resume because it's coming full circle from his time in Philadelphia, and he got traded to New Orleans and really was not a fan of New Orleans. They had that one really good year where they had Rondo, Cousins, and Anthony Davis, but he was able to get to the Bucks, and he was really the missing piece for the Bucks because instead of Eric Bledsoe, instead of George Hill, they had Drew Holiday, who was a legit third option to be a scorer, but he's also a legit person that you can go ahead, put him on Chris Paul. Chris Paul wasn't able to do anything in the finals against him, and you can switch him on Devin Booker. He can body up bigger players as well, and he plays a lot bigger than his size because the Celtics were prioritizing just crashing from the corner and getting those rebounds. And it's kind of like what Josh Hart was doing with the Knicks, where you just come from the corner, crash on the rebound, and he was making such an impact that way. But it's not like he was taking shots away from anyone. He was probably their most efficient player all series.
Yeah, I believe his shooting percentage was right at like high 60s at one point with how efficient he was. And then Derek White, another guy who was exceptional all year, he was making these big shots when it mattered. He went on, I think he ended up having 20 points this last game to
Yeah.
close it out, even after a massive injury. So both of these players here, the impact that they had, especially with what Brad Stevens was able to turn into Derek White, Andrew Holiday, and Al Horford, was truly exceptional. So, I mean, the credit goes to pretty much the entire organization. Brad Stevens, what he was able to churn out for players like Romeo Langford and Kemba Walker and these other players who needed a fresh face, Marcus Smart, and then Joe Mazzulla stepping in for Emi Udoka and what he was able to accomplish, all the hatred that he got last year, and then ultimately the whole team and how they were able to rise to the occasion.
Yeah. Do you think losing last year really almost made them a better team than they would have been if they just got to the finals and lost to Denver in maybe a 6 or 7 game series?
I think they would have been a lot more complacent. I think losing to the Heat, who were the eighth seed, who did end up making it to the finals, must have. I mean, it really stung for them because we saw the Bucks go down, and then the Celtics were the two seed then. So I think that it had to make them reassess because there were conversations about whether they were going to trade Jalen Brown, who they were going to move, but it felt like there was somebody who needed to leave. And I think they needed that rock bottom in order for them to reach to this level of success.
Yeah, and I think they needed that rock bottom as well. And you can feel the players' energy when they talk about it and being able to get that championship for Al Horford. And Al Horford also talking to Tom Brady now about extending his career. And he's like, now that I have one, why don't we go ahead and run it back next year? Because the Celtics are already talking about, they're like, hey, we won the NBA title, but we probably got the least credit of any team to win an NBA title probably in the last decade.
For sure.
Like, even more than the Nuggets, people are like, "Oh, well, the Nuggets swept the Heat. That's what they should have done." But, like, everyone was picking the Nuggets, where everyone majority of people, I'd say 70%, and the money was 89%, were picking the Dallas Mavericks to beat the Celtics. So it's like, not only were they a heavy underdog, but they're also talking about, like, "Hey, we know one isn't enough because you're not gonna get us the credit we deserve." And looking at the landscape of the East right now, you have the Milwaukee Bucks, but it seems like Chris Middleton, Giannis, injuries are just getting in their way right now. Damian Lillard talking about how he didn't work out all summer this year when he came into training camp, and he said he came into training camp out of shape. And then you also have, I don't know, the Miami Heat, where we don't know what Jimmy Butler's going to be, but I think the Celtics have gotten over that hurdle with the Miami Heat mentally. And then it's kind of just, what are the Pacers going to do? The Knicks, no one wants to play for Tom Thibodeau because every single time they do a poll, who's the coach you would least like to play for? It's Tom Thibodeau, so they're not getting any better. So do you think their biggest competition in the East would be a team like Indiana if they add a player?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the Heat, if they lose Jimmy Butler, they're going to take a step back. The Bucks feel like they're getting old, but then also feel like they're getting chemistry issues. We saw a lot of Doc Rivers teams ends up having that issues, whether, and I can use pretty much every example with Philadelphia with James Harden and Joel Embiid, or with the Clippers, or with the Celtics. We saw the Big Four and the Celtics and all the chemistry issues they had eventually. So I think they're going to end up crashing and burning. So really, it's like a team like the Pacers, if maybe they can reform that United trip with Paul George. I know he's available this summer. But outside of that, like the Knicks, I don't. The Knicks were a great story, but I felt like you know Jalen Brunson going on the Michael Jordan run that he did. I just don't see them duplicating that again. So yeah, I mean, it would be a team like the Pacers, unless if there's another team that comes from the woodworks that completely blows up. But I just don't know if that happens yet.
Yeah, and it's like, again, they didn't even need Porzingis to beat the Pacers. So if we have a healthy Porzingis, it's like, okay, that takes this team to a whole nother level. And if they run it back with the exact same team, I think they'll get better just by Sam Hauser, undrafted rookie free agent, came over from the Maine Red Claws, hitting massive threes in the NBA Finals. He got hot and stretch, and the Celtics are so good, they have a guy designated for half court shots.
Yeah, yeah, that was insane. So yeah, I mean, this team, I think that they can easily get through the East, and then on the West side, it's like the Nuggets could give them trouble potentially. Other than that, like the Timberwolves are probably going to lose Karl Anthony Towns this year, and then the Mavericks, I think they'll see a bit of a finals hangover. I don't think they come back next year unless if they make a big move. So really, like I look at the Nuggets as their big threat. The Thunder, if they can get a piece potentially, they're always going. to I mean, they're competitive and they have assets. So
That'd be a great series, too.
yeah. So those are the two teams that I could see that, but I think they're due for another finals appearance next year.
Yeah, definitely, because if they made the finals versus the Miami Heat last year, Jason Tatum sprains his ankle the first play versus the Miami Heat. Who knows if the Celtics would have completed the comeback, because it's never been done in NBA history, but that would have been three straight finals appearances for them. And it seems like they're a little bit iffy on Joe Mazzulla last year, but now that they're fully bought in, I feel like this team can get even better, especially with Jrue Holiday and with Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, even someone like Sam Hauser, just getting better, getting a little more mature. And as Drew Holiday said, even our white guys play defense, which was honestly my biggest concern with the Celtics, because I'd watch them in the regular season. I'm like, why are three white guys on the court right now? Like, this is the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think for sure. I mean, especially with they have the title now, and now they're trying to just prove to them that it wasn't just a fluke. And if they can make it back to the finals and win it again, nobody can really take that away from them. So they played tough defense. They hit a bunch of threes, and A lot of people have bought in. Joe Mazzulla, it's a little goofy, but ultimately, it turns out he's a great coach. Plus, also, as we mentioned with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, it seems like for a while they didn't quite know who was on and like how to make that work. But now that we have Tatum as more of a playmaker and then Jaylen Brown who's going to take that tough shot, they figured out how to make that work. So Celtics can be scary for the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like their defense. I feel like Tatum's defense gets better every year, but you did have ESPN. It seemed like they were just parading people around to, I don't know if it was necessarily to hate on the Celtics, but I have no idea why Joel Embiid, of all people, was on there to talk about the Boston Celtics. And then he may get fined potentially for, I don't know, recruiting outside of the league year for 2024, because he basically was like, "Yeah, we're gonna load up next year, even though I can never stay healthy, and I never have stayed healthy, and it's just something I haven't done in my career, and I also have never beat the Boston Celtics." And he's talking about, "Oh yeah, the run was easy. I was injured." Like, you would have made a difference. Like Joel Embiid, you were gonna make a difference when at times Al Horford was shutting you down. At times Jason Tatum was blocking you in that series, and then you let Tatum drop 50, or I think that was the game he had 50 in game 6, right? And then
Yeah.
people are talking about how Tatum isn't clutch, yet they put Joel Embiid on this pedestal, even though Joel Embiid has never been out of the second round. He's talking like he's someone who can make a difference versus the Boston Celtics, and your difference maker is going to be Paul George, of all people. First of all, what sane person moves from LA to Philadelphia?
Yeah, no, I don't think Paul George. Okay, here's the thing. Joel Embiid has been in the league now for 10 years now, and there's a history here. He hasn't beaten the Celtics once. Even when the Celtics were in rebuild, he can't beat the Celtics. And then he's had talent like Jimmy Butler, he's had James Harden, and now he's trying to get Paul George, and none of it's worked. They haven't made it out of the second round once. And everything you said about Joel Embiid, I agree with here. But it'd be one thing if the Heat were saying that. If they said, "Oh well," if Jimmy Butler would have said that, I would have said, "Okay, that's valid," because Jimmy Butler has beaten him on multiple occasions. All right,
Twice.
yeah. But for the Sixers, this is equivalent to Micah Parsons saying to the 49ers, like, "Yeah, the reason why they made the Super Bowl is because they didn't run into us." It's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because they own you the last decade. So it doesn't even matter if they ran into you because they've had your number for the last decade. Like you can't beat them.
Yeah, and they literally, it's exactly the same as Micah Parsons. You know why? It's because when they faced the Celtics in that Brett Brown era, the Celtics were literally the youngest team in the league at that point, similar to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, exactly. Similar to them. So, I mean, I think, you know, Paul George will make them better, no doubt about it. But who are they going to give up to get Paul George? And Paul George is also older. He's been in the league now for 12, 13 years now. He's 34. Are you going to have to get rid of Tyrese Maxey to get him? Are you going to have to get rid of more picks? You already made big trades to get James Harden. And at this point, you have this massive contract to overcome with Tobias Harris. Who wants that contract? So I don't think you guys can get Paul George if you wanted to.
I know who wants that contract. The Suns.
The Suns.
The Suns are the team that probably accumulates the most bad contracts in the league. Like, picture Tobias Harris, Bradley
Beal.
Beal, Devin Booker. We still don't have a point guard. Maybe Tobias Harris is going to play point forward. And at one point, Kevin Durant was tied to the Philadelphia 76ers, but I don't even think Kevin Durant would get the Sixers over the Celtics at this point in his career, maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, I don't see any solution for the Sixers here to overcome the Celtics. Maybe if they had picked Jimmy Butler over Tobias Harris, and then they were to go out and get someone like I think James Harden would have fit in that team well, or Paul George then. But at the end of the day, like your team isn't good enough or deep enough to compete with that.
Yeah, no, they're not deep enough to compete with that. And Tobias Harris was probably one of the worst decisions by a franchise, or as a contract that really handicapped the team. And I think you know where I'm going with this. You know, we talk about quarterbacks on the show. We talk about paying the wrong guy and how much it can destroy your future. And it really just sets you down a path of we're fine being mediocre over the next 5 to 7 years because Trevor Lawrence is officially inked up. Congratulations to Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
But for the Jaguars, yikes. This is like one of those situations where Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence have similar stats. However, Daniel Jones was the guy who's Walt Jr. out of Duke. He's like, who takes a quarterback out of Duke? And then he has one potentially passable season if you're generous, if you're a New York sports fan junkie. And then the Giants are like, you know what? Give him $140 million. And then Trevor Lawrence has the same amount of playoff wins as Daniel Jones. They pretty much have the same exact numbers. I think Trevor Lawrence actually has more turnovers than Daniel Jones, which is, I feel like, a really tough thing to do, even if it is the NFL and the highest level. And it's the situation where he was the chosen one. The Jaguars feel obligated to pay him because they're afraid of what happens if they don't.
Yeah. And ultimately, when a team that's as desperate as the Jaguars, I mean, let's look at how they've been the last decade. They were terrible. And for a team like that, just being mediocre is being good for them. And that's good enough for them. And I think Trevor Lawrence, he can definitely reach another level because we haven't seen him really be like good. I mean, he had a stretch for one season where he was good for like half a season. But other than that, like he hasn't shown that. And I know he had Urban Meyer, and then the year before that, he was banged up this past year. But it's at this point, like you have the leverage here where you don't have to pay him for another year and a half.
Yeah.
And then if you what you really should have done is give him another year, let him play, and see if he's worth it at the end of the day, because he's still going into year 4. But instead, they pay him $275 million over 5 years, paying him more than Joe Burrow, who has made a Super Bowl, more than Patrick Mahomes, who have won 3 of them, and Jalen Hurts, who has made a Super Bowl as well. Meanwhile, he had a 27-0 deficit that the Chargers choked away so that he won it. And that's where he got his playoff win. And then other than that, they had a massive collapse last year that was inexcusable for a team that went out and got Kevin Ridley. They have Christian Kirk. And now what are they going to be now? The third best team in their division?
Yeah, and it's weird because he has this kind of strange, and I'm not saying that he's not more talented than this player. He has this strange Nick Foles kind of thing to him where Nick Foles looks really good sometimes and he looks really bad in games he shouldn't. And then he just pulls these games where you're like, he beat what team? And like, what was this team thinking on the national stage? And then Nick Foles being able to get to a Super Bowl, and then also Doug Peterson being part of that run, and then Trevor Lawrence as well. It's like he's Nick Foles with longer hair, but he just has more turnovers than him because he has these games where you're like, where's Trevor Lawrence? There's an APB out for him, and people are looking all over Florida. They're like, hopefully he did not get snatched by a gator because we're in Jacksonville right now.
Definitely
Or
happened.
hopefully he didn't, I don't know, run into something in Florida, someone on bath salts. And then he also has this complex where he has long hair, and I've had long hair before too, but like you have a guy laying down for media day, blow drying your hair so it's waving for the videos. It's like, come on. It's just a little cartoonish. Like I get you want the flow, but at the same time it's like just animate it, I guess.
Yeah, he's a little animated. He seems like he's a little full of himself as well. But at the end of the day, like for the Jaguars, what's really their solution? Because they went out and they acquired decent pieces. They overpaid for Christian Kirk, but he turned out to be pretty good. They traded for Kelvin Ridley, and now they went out and signed Gabe Davis. But for a team that's historically been one of the worst teams since they went to Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence is probably their best quarterback they've had at this point. So paying him all this money, although it's stupid, that's ultimately what teams that are desperate do. I mean, that's what the Cardinals did with Kyler Murray. That's what, and we can go down the list of teams. The Giants are desperate. They went out and signed Daniel Jones. So desperate teams make stupid decisions that affect the QB market. And now when it comes time for Josh Allen to renew his contract, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, all these other players who are better than him, or Jordan Love even, who's in room for a contract extension, they're going to say, okay, well, Trevor Lawrence is getting this much money, and I've done a hell of a lot more. Pay me more. It's going to affect the QB market forever and potentially ruin it.
Yeah, especially like even someone like Jared Goff, he'd be like, Trevor got what? I could have gotten way more money than that. Like you're paying $275 million, and you can blame it on a bad year. You can blame it on bad luck with injuries last season, but you did have an opportunity where Patrick Mahomes got hurt and then Trevor Lawrence turned it over back-to-back drives and lost the game, where you had a real opportunity to actually go out there and beat the Chiefs in Kansas City.
Yeah, and you blew it. You could have beat the Chiefs. You could have been one of the only 3 players to beat them. But instead, they went back.
Yeah, and now it's like, okay, are you the first best team in your division? Are you the second best team in your division? Are you the third or fourth best team in the division? Because honestly, I've seen more flashes from Will Levis, be it it's more of a Jameis Winston style than Trevor Lawrence, but at least I've seen him have some moxie, and it seems like he can really rally his team. It seems like there's more of like a backing of Will Levis because, like, okay, this guy's a freak. He's putting mayonnaise in his coffee, but he went out there and with under, I believe it was 5 minutes, he went out
Yeah.
there on Sunday Night Football and beat the Dolphins down 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and he did that, and he made massive throws. I've seen enough from Will Levis. I think he's fine. But this team as a whole, like their offense is pretty average. I like Travis Etienne. I like Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. But otherwise, like their defense is also extremely lackluster. Trayvon Walker, #1 overall pick, one of the biggest bust #1s probably since Jadeveon Clowney, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so nothing really impressed me there. So I mean, if they want to continue to be 8-9, 9-8, then they made the right decision. But otherwise, like I don't know, like I think you should have waited another year to sign him.
Yeah, and then if his like injury issues continue, we're gonna have to see Mac Jones play for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is gonna be an absolute nightmare because Mac Jones has gone. I feel like a little bit cuckoo. I feel like that Florida sun has definitely got to his head a little bit, where he's like, "Yeah, I wanted to be a rapper, but in New England, we can't do that."
Yeah, yeah. I don't. He had the arc that pretty much every New England person has, which is move to Florida.
Yeah,
Look at that's even what Tom Brady did.
yeah. Tom Brady did it. Ray Allen did it.
Yeah, I mean that's where you go after the cold Boston. You go to Florida because you can actually swim in the water.
Yeah, you can actually swim in the water, and you can actually, I don't know, go outside 8 months out of the year instead of 2 or 3.
Yeah,
Because in the summer, it's like, it's nice, but is it going to rain for 39 straight days? Who knows?
yeah. We don't know. We just don't know. But I say this is a football podcast. I say it's time we talk about our final divisions to go over in the NFL, which is the AFC East and NFC East. We've gone over every division to this point: the East, the South, the North, the West, the this, the that. Now it's time to go over the East. Should we start with the AFC or the NFC first?
Let's start with the NFC first. Let's go ahead and get the, I don't know. I feel like the NFC East is just a weird division. The Eagles are definitely #1 in my book because I don't know, adding Saquon Barkley where they're like, you know what? D Swift isn't the answer. We actually need a run game and we actually need to be able to use our offensive line, and it's time to stop with Boston Scott being a legitimate player on our team where it's nice when he shows up for a few games, but like, can we go out there and get a Ferrari? So now we have 2 Bugattis, if you want to call them that, in AJ Brown and Saquon Barkley, where these are 2 guys who can take over a game, where on the flip side, Dallas is like, we need a running back. Let's not draft one. We're going to let the Panthers outsmart us there in the draft. God forbid. Tepperville outsmarts the Cowboys and takes the running back that they wanted. We're also going to let our running back walk because he has to go to Tennessee because we have to pay CeeDee Lamb. He's licking his chops looking at Justin Jefferson's contract, especially when you see the numbers comparison, at least, albeit junkyards with Dak Prescott. We also have to pay Dak again, who's looking at Trevor's contract like, huh? Like, you've seen the graphic with his numbers versus Mahomes in the regular season. That's going to be what his agent uses. And then we also have to pay the Joel Embiid of the NFL, Micah Parsons.
Yeah, so they're in a lot of trouble there. And then the other 2 teams, we have rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels for the Commanders. They signed a bunch of players in the offseason, Austin Eckler for one of them, and then like Bobby Wagner and a couple other figures on defense. Dan Quinn takes over the helm. Commanders, big question mark there. I think maybe they're better, but how much better, we don't know.
It's weird. They seem too old.
Yeah, they are. And then we have the Giants, who this is a team that is not a friend of the show. unlike most teams on the show. They are annual recipients of the worst thing to be on the Brickyard, which is on the worst top five, perennial top five losers. Um, well, Daniel Jones will be back at the helm after his injury. They went and drafted Malik Neighbors, who had a bet with another rookie wide receiver to have the offensive rookie of the year. And then he rescinded his bet after his first training camp with Daniel Jones. Ironic, you decide.
Darren Waller retires.
Darren Waller retires after releasing one of the worst music videos of all time. And they traded for Brian Burns. So that's been their big Giants offseason. Do I think their defense will be good? Yes. Do I think their offense will be good? No. I
No.
don't. They also lost Saquon Barkley, who went to the Eagles.
Yeah, and he was like, I don't know, when you watch the playoff game versus the Minnesota Vikings, what did they do outside of throwing the ball to Saquon Barkley, whether it be running the ball with him or whether it just be him running those short routes and getting first down here, first down here? You're like, oh, wait a minute. They didn't do anything else outside of Saquon Barkley. And then they're in a situation like the Carolina Panthers where they're like, we're bad. We're fine on defense, so let's get better on defense, but we're also mediocre on offense, so let's offset that and get way worse on offense.
Yeah, they did almost like that DJ Moore trade, but without getting anything back in return. They're like, let's just let Saquon walk. We'll just let him walk. He's been great for us, but let's just let him go. He's been great, but we're over it now. Let's take in Devin Singletary. He'll be the one to fill in the shoes for him.
Yeah, and see him twice a year. That's the worst part. He's in your division, and he's like, I don't know. How far is Philadelphia from East Rutherford? Like
2 hours, 3 hours?
Yeah, 3 hours with traffic, maybe 4.
Not even. Yeah. So he's pretty much just like 2 hours away now.
Yeah, so I guess that's a good place to start. We can start with the New York Football Giants. Let me go ahead and get their schedule pulled up, but anything else you want to talk about the Giants while I'm pulling up that schedule related to either Brian Daboll, their defense, or how much worse can they actually get?
Yeah, so let's remember 2 years ago, they were 9-7-1. They were a lot of lucky breaks. They won 7 close games, which years prior they didn't come close to at that point. Do I think that they can do the same thing this year? No. However, I do think their defense will be top 12 defense. They have Brian Burns. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. They have Bobby Okereke, friend of the show. Okereke on the show. But I don't love their secondary. They have Deontay Banks, who's fine, but otherwise not a big fan of their defense secondary. So I think they'll be able to stop the run well, but as far as putting points on the board, I'm not super enthusiastic. So this team should be the worst team in this division.
Okay. Yeah, so let's go ahead and go through that division because they have honestly a very weird schedule to start it out. Starting with week 1, they play the Vikings without Kirk Cousins at 1 o'clock at home in East Rutherford.
I'm going to take the Vikings to win that game here. And I will say, when we go through the divisions, I don't think they get a win against the Eagles or the Cowboys, but I do think they win some games against the Commanders.
Yeah, probably split there. And then the very next game, they play the Commanders, and we don't know who the quarterback is going to be at that point. Is it going to be Jaden McDaniels at that point?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be I'm trying to remember who they put in for them here, but I'll take the Giants to win. It's early. They have some momentum. Typically, these bad teams will perform well beginning of the season, so I'll get them a win against the Commanders.
All right, and then after that, they go to Cleveland at 1 o'clock. Yikes.
Cleveland's a tough game. This could be a really gritty game. Low teens, potentially. I'll take the Browns to win it, though. I like the coaching advantage for Kevin Stefanski.
Low teens? How about single digits?
12 to 9.
Honestly, the Browns will still be healthy at that point. And then after that, the Cowboys, looks like this is a Thursday night game, come to East Rutherford, New Jersey.
If there's one thing I know about the Cowboys, they love beating up on bad teams. And on primetime, I think this is where we see a big game from the Cowboys. So giving them a win there.
All right. And then suddenly the Giants are like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have let our best weapon walk because we've scored 13 points in every single game with Daniel Jones without Darren Waller and Saquon Barkley. And then after getting beat down at home by the Cowboys, they have to go to Seattle.
Ooh, yeah. And I just, Seattle, they're a better team. I mean, I know they have a new coach and there might be some struggles there, but I think the Seahawks should be able to beat them.
Yeah, good defense, and then DK Metcalf, I'll take him alone to beat the Giants. And then after that, it's October now. This isn't your September Cincinnati Bengals. They have to play them on Sunday Night Football.
Sunday Night Football, Joe Burrow. Um, I'm not going to bet against Joe Burrow, second best quarterback in the league. I'm good with that.
All right, so Giants are 1-5. As
Yep.
some of you may have expected, some of you may be furious, but the majority of you, you're probably like, yeah, that makes sense. And then after that, they finish off a 2-game homestand against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and this is a revenge game for Saquon Barkley, who's been trying to get paid for 3 years now. He's facing his former team. He's going to go up against Kayvon Thibodeau and Bobby Okereke, and I just don't think they have the boys and clientele to stop him. Give me the Eagles.
How many yards? Like 200?
I think a minimum of 100 and then a couple of receiving yards as well.
Yeah, I could see him like having like
Like a
180 total yards in this game.
Yeah, good year for fantasy for him.
And then after that, they go to Pittsburgh, and it's not getting any easier. Do you want Daniel Jones or Russell Wilson? Who knows?
I mean,
It's a Monday night.
this is a winnable game for them, but at the same time, I just don't see. I think Russell Wilson will be better in Pittsburgh than he was in Denver. I'll take the Steelers in this game.
All right, and going off to a 1-7 start. After that, well, they beat the Commanders the first time, and you thought potentially they'd split. It's November now. Jane McDaniels is getting into the fold, and he might be Daniel Jones, who actually can get the ball to his receivers. So do you still think the Giants split with the Commanders?
Well, they actually have dominated. They have actually done pretty well against the Commanders historically. Over the last 5 years, they are 7-2 against them. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so they actually kind of own the Commanders. I'm actually going to take them to beat the Commanders twice.
Okay. And then after that, we have potentially the worst game of the year. Daniel Jones taking on Bryce Young in Carolina. Oh, no, it's in London. Cat
Lo-
teams do well in London.
Cat teams do want to in London. However, the Giants at this point, Brian Daboll, not only has he lost his hair, not only has he lost his eyebrows, but he no longer has a beard. He is officially bald from head to toe. At this point, he has to win a game. I think in London, those Brits, they're going to be like, Daniel Jones, the best in the business. I think they actually get the win.
Oi, Daniel.
Oh, Daniel. What a great football player, is what
Yeah.
they'll say.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in England has the same IQ, so I guess that makes sense. And then after that, they come back home after a bye week versus Baker Money Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah, well, guess what? They ain't in London anymore. I think between Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield alone, they get the dub.
Do you think Brian Daboll just resigns and he's like, actually, I want to go back to coaching Josh Allen?
Yeah, maybe. He might even take over the Bills' job if the Bills don't do well this upcoming season, potentially.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels style with the Patriots, which was supposed to be the plan. So I could see that happening, actually. And then after that, Cowboys again, like beating up on bad teams. Looks like this is a Thanksgiving game at 4:30, November 28th
Yeah, no.
in Dallas.
Yep, and just like Americans to the Pilgrims, it will not go well for the Giants.
And then after that, the Giants host Taysom Hill and the New Orleans Saints. Look out.
Ooh, well, I'll be nice to the Giants here. I'll let them win this game.
You'll let them win.
I'm looking at what's their record right now.
4-9 if they beat the Saints.
Nah, never mind. They're 3-10.
They're 3-10.
I was too nice. The Saints, we were mean to them in the preview, but I do think that the Saints will be better than the Giants.
Yeah. And then after that, they host the Ravens in a back-to-back home game, Stan.
Can they stop Derrick Henry alone is the question. And then they also have to think of Lamar. No.
All right. 3-11 now, going to Atlanta, and bad news. It's at 1 o'clock.
No chance. And I think, is that at home for the Falcons?
Yeah.
Yeah, at home, 1 o'clock. Kirk Cousins, we're not betting against him.
And then they, in a to-be-determined game, they host the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, the Colts, they'll probably be contending for a wild card at this point. I don't like their chances there.
All right. And then after that, they go to Philadelphia, where we've seen Gardner Minshew light up the Giants on his own.
Yeah, and the Eagles have also owned the Giants the last few years, so Give me the Eagles to beat the Giants here. And what's their final record there?
3-14.
That sounds about right.
All right, so the Giants currently 3-14. Let's go ahead and get the question marks out of the way. I have no idea what to think about this team, but I'm going to try and tackle the Washington Commanders. And when I think of the Commanders, I think of a lot of veteran signings where it seemed like they had a lot of cash. They wanted to make a splash in free agency, but they weren't able to get the top guys. And it seems like just a lot of older players. So I could see them potentially maybe starting out hot, but I'm not really a believer in Cliff Kingsbury, especially when you had Kyler Murray screaming at him on the sideline, straight up disrespecting the guy. And then you have Dan Quinn, who always looks like he's silently farting in the booth as a head coach. And we don't know what his part two as a head coach is going to be like, especially in Washington. It seems like it's still a very dysfunctional franchise where, I don't know, you had sewage leaking in your stadium in the showers. This is the most disgusting franchise. I mean, you want to call it FedEx Field? How about Sears Field? Because it shouldn't exist anymore. It should go bankrupt and they need a makeover, just like Sears.
Yeah, no kidding. So Commanders, not super high on them. One thing about them, you mentioned how much people they signed. They signed Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner, all these people. Does it remind you at all of like the Patriots a couple years ago when they went out and got like Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith and Matthew Judon, like that kind of team?
Yeah, I mean, not really, because Matthew Judon's actually really good, and Bobby Wagner like was talking about retiring 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So like Bobby Wagner has been really good, but it seems like he's not really going to have an impact outside of his leadership and maybe film sessions off the field and making some high IQ plays. But athletically, I can't see him being the massive disruptor he used to be, where arguably he was the best linebacker in the league at one point.
Yeah. Especially during the Legion of Boom. Well, whether it is Jaden Daniels or Sam Hartman or Jeff Driscoll or Marcus Mariota, one of these guys will be playing for the Commanders week 1 in Tampa Bay at Raymond James Stadium against Baker.
Ooh, give me Baker in that game. Baker just got some money. He wants to throw a party, and we're giving it to Mike Evans. We're going to go ahead and blow up that Dan Quinn team who likes to blitz a lot here. So give me the Bucks.
All right. And then they host the Giants at 1 o'clock the following week.
Yeah, so you had the Giants beating the Commanders twice, so I will stick with that, and they go 0-2.
And then Monday Night Football, week 3, they go to Cincinnati.
They go to Cincinnati. Why do I feel like that's just a game the Bengals are going to lose? Like September, Monday Night Football, and then you're just like, what the hell happened? And then people are like, oh my God, are the Bengals done? What's going on with Joe Burrow? Is it time to fire Zach Taylor? So that's just screams random Bengals loss, where they're kind of going on the same trend that the Steelers had, where they lose games where you're like, why?
Yep, I see that. And then the very next week, they go to State Farm Stadium to take on the Cardinals.
They go to State Farm Stadium. Kyler versus Cliff Kingsbury. Give me the Cardinals.
All right. And then the following week, they host the Cleveland Browns.
They host the Cleveland Browns. Give me Cleveland in that game, just out of respect for the dog pound.
All right. And then following that week, they stay in that division and they go to Baltimore to take on the Ravens.
Yeah, again, can you stop Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson? I mean, this is going to be Zay Flowers' second year, so let's see if he takes that massive leap, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Well, lucky for them, after those 2 tough games, they get to host Tepperville in Washington.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a winnable game for them, especially since the Panthers were like, you know what? That defense we had that was really good. Let's get rid of that. So I will go with the Commanders in this game.
All right. And then after that, they will host Caleb Williams and the Bears.
Caleb Williams and the Bears. Again, give me Caleb Williams and the Bears. I think the Bears defense and offense is going to be in full swing at that point in the season.
All right.
So 2-6.
Not the greatest. And then they go to East Rutherford to take on the Giants, the divisional foe.
And again, you said the Giants own the Commanders, so I'll go ahead and stick with that. I think, yeah, we had the Giants going 3-14. Two of those wins are against the Commanders, so we'll stay with that.
All right. And then following that at 1 o'clock, they will host Russell Wilson and the Steel City Steelers.
Again, just a game that the Steelers will lose, and you're like, come on. That's such a signature Mike Tomlin loss where the Steelers just do not show up in that game. Jaden Daniels, that's probably where he shows some flashes at that point. Maybe Steelers are dealing with some injuries, but give me the Commanders to upset the Steelers.
All right. And then an interesting game, Thursday Night Football, 8 o'clock. They take on the Eagles. One thing I do want to mention about them and the Eagles, you've seen how they've been the last few years with them. Close game last year. The Eagles did sweep them, but it was a 34-31 game. And then the year before, ending their undefeated season, they take them on Thursday Night Football in Philadelphia.
Yeah, give me the Commanders in that game. I think they deserve another win in here, so we'll go 4-7.
All right. And then feeling a little hot, beating 2 games in a row, they host the Cowboys on Sunday the 24th.
On Sunday the 24th, they host Dallas. Honestly, at that point, I really don't know what the Dallas Cowboys offense is going to be because they don't have a run game. It's going to be CeeDee Lamb or bust. So give me the Commanders. Why not?
Okay. So they've won 3 straight games. They're back in the mix a little bit, dare I say. Well, they host the Tennessee Titans the following week.
No, I don't think he beat the Titans. I think Will Levis comes in there and is like, what a nice win streak you have. It'd be a shame if I poured mayonnaise all over that.
And then after that heartbreaking loss to Mayonnaise Boy, they have a week off. Bye week.
Maybe they win.
Maybe they beat the bye week.
Could be a tie.
And then they have to go to the Saints to take on the Saints.
They have to go the Saints to take on the Saints. Well, yeah, I'll give them the win there. I think they can definitely beat New Orleans and Derek Carr. Maybe Dennis Allen is out by then, or he threw his hip out, wagging his sass there and yelling at referees. So I will take the Commanders.
All right. And then the last 3 games of the season here, they host the Eagles 1 o'clock.
I'll take the Eagles and the Commanders to split. So give me the Eagles.
All right.
They're perfect 6 for 9.
And then in a dangerous flex game, they host Kirk Cousins and the Falcons.
Oh, it could be at 1 o'clock. I don't know what time it's going to be at, so give me a tie for that one.
A tie. Okay.
6, 9, and 1. We got to keep the 6, 9 in there.
All right. And then they will end the season with the Cowboys in Jerry World.
In the season with the Cowboys in Jerry World. I'll have them splitting with the Cowboys as well. So give me the Cowboys in that game, and the Commanders go 6, 10, and 1.
I like it. I think that's fair. I think they got a little bit better. Do I think they'll be exceptional? No, but I think that's fair. That's a good record.
Yeah, like the people talking about like, oh, watch out for the Commanders. They could be this really good sleeper team. Like just looking at the schedule, like a lot of hard games in here.
Yeah, you think? Plus, alone, you have 2 playoff teams in their own division. Plus, you're going to take on the Bears. Plus, a lot of other teams in there that are going to give you trouble. I don't know. I just don't see it for them.
Yeah, I don't see it either. So let's go ahead and shift to the Dallas Cowboys. Gonna grab a pen, but let everyone know what you think about the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, so for the Dallas Cowboys, what did they do this offseason? Well, Tony Pollard walked out the door. They replaced him with old friend Zeke Elliott. They also lost Tyron Smith. They had to make some tough cuts. Now they're dealing with contract fiascos with Dak Prescott, with Micah Parsons, and CeeDee Lamb. I think that right now this team, their offensive line got much worse. I think their running game got much worse. So their offense won't be as dynamic as it once was. They'll still have some talent on defense that'll help them win games. And I think they'll still beat up on bad opponents. However, when it comes to these games against teams like the 49ers, the Eagles, and whatnot, I think that they're going to have some trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And I just don't know what their offense is going to look like because they don't have a run game.
Yeah, they signed Zeke, who each year of his career has regressed in rushing yards per game. Other than that, you have Deuce Vaughn and players of that nature. So I don't trust their run game. And then receivers-wise, we love CeeDee Lamb, but otherwise the rest of the team is pretty forgettable. They moved on from Michael Gallup. So it's going to be question marks there on offense.
Well, Dallas is not Dallas. Vegas is definitely high on Deuce Vaughn if you look at their Super Bowl odds. But Tom Brady, first game, Fox, Cowboys in Cleveland at the Dog Pound.
This is going to be tough. I think that I'll take them to beat the Browns here. I think that the offense for the Browns, we don't know what it'll be like with Deshaun Watson. I think their defense is good enough to beat the Browns.
Okay. And then after that, they host the New Orleans Saints at 1 o'clock.
Yep. And I think that the Saints, another team that I think their defense could be able to contain. So I'll give them the win against the Saints as well.
All right. And then after that, they host the Baltimore Ravens at 4:25, probably a game of the week.
Yep, game of the week for sure. And I do think that Derrick Henry will take care of business against the Cowboys. They are no longer perfect.
All right. And then after that, they play the Giants.
Yep. And I think that they're going to beat the Giants twice in this time around. We saw that in our Giants preview. Make sure to check that out. So I'll take them to beat the Giants here.
And then after that, they go to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. Looks like on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, see, that's a tough one to pick. I think that this is going to be an ugly game, potentially. But I'll take the Cowboys here.
Okay, you're taking Micah Parsons over TJ Watt?
I'm taking Dak over Russ.
And then after that, they host the Detroit Lions. Lions looking for revenge from when they got robbed last time.
Yeah, I think just between the animosity with Detroit, with how they got robbed last year, I think they go out and tear them up.
And then after that, they play the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco.
Yeah, and we've seen the last 10 years of footage against them, against the 49ers. I think we know exactly what happens there.
And then after that, they go to Atlanta at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, Kirk. At this point, between the Lions loss and the 49ers loss, I think Kirk Cousins does some damage against them as well.
Okay. So it started out hot. You were 4-1. Now you're 4-4. And people are like, Michael McCarthy, what is happening right now? Because the very next week, you host the Eagles.
The Eagles, I think they're going to split with the Eagles. I think given their circumstances right now, this is a must-win game for them. I'll take them to beat the Eagles in this situation.
You think they can stop Saquon?
I think I think they can. In one game, they can.
Okay, so they move to 5-4, and then it is the Battle of Texas, Houston coming to town.
And I don't think they can beat the Texans. The Texans are significantly better. They have more guts. I think that they're going to take the win.
And then after that, they play the Giants. You said you had them beating the Giants twice.
Yep, I think they beat the Giants twice.
All right, so 6-5, kind of teetering on the edge right now. Then they host the Cincinnati Bengals in December. Not a great time to play Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet against Joe Burrow in December.
And then after that, they go to Carolina to play the Panthers. Kind of close game last time.
It was a close game last time. This is an inexcusable game for them to lose, so I'll take them to beat the Panthers.
All right, still teetering on the edge at 7-6 here, and then they host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Looks like Sunday Night Football.
Sunday Night Football, definitely a good game. I will take them to beat the Bucs, though.
Okay. So they are now 8-6, playoff hopes looking alive, and then they go to Philadelphia to play the Eagles.
And this is where I see them losing to the Eagles.
Okay. And then they finish out the season versus the Commanders.
And this is another game where I think I see them lose here.
Okay. So they would go ahead and then finish at 8-9.
8-9. I think that 8-8 and 9-8 is where I'd kind of have them. I think they're still a playoff team. Like, I think their defense is good enough. They have Defensive Player of the Year, Deron Bland, Micah Parsons, and whatnot. But at the same time, their offense is going to be worse. They're not going to have a run game. They're going to be CeeDee Lamb dependent. And with that, when you have a player who's going to have the high usage rate that CeeDee Lamb happens, typically they're either going to be exhausted or they're going to wear down eventually. I'm not saying that will happen with him this year, but that's definitely a risk for them. Plus, we have another year older with Dak Prescott. The offensive line is worse. So I think 9-8 is pretty appropriate.
Yeah, honestly, I could see them going 7-10 if I was picking this.
Yeah, I think for a team, they were 12. I don't think they win their division, but I do think they're still in the playoff mix overall.
Yeah, because no one wins their division in back-to-back years, and
it hasn't happened in
East.
20. It hasn't happened in 20 years in this division for some god reason.
All right, and then now we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles They added Saquon Barkley. However, I'm not really in love with their choice of coordinators. I think Kellen Moore is really just a name more than an actually talented offensive coordinator. And then you go out there, same thing with your defensive coordinator. I think he's more of a name than an actual top tier talent. And then you just have some of these clips of Sirianni where he needs his babysitter on the sideline basically to hold him back and keep him in check. People asking him in interviews, like, okay, what do your coordinators do? And they're like, okay, if they do that, this, and that, what do you do here? And he's like, I don't know. What do I do here? So I think Philadelphia does have a lot of explosive weapons, but I do think their defense is still vulnerable.
For sure. So I have their schedule up here, and we'll go through it here. Just as far as that question mark there, do you still think they're going to be the favorite for that division there?
Yeah, they should win the division. I think it would be more of like a 11-6 or 12-5, but let's see their schedule.
All right. So they start the season in San Paulo to take on the Packers
Ooh,
on a Friday game, by the way.
a Friday game? Why?
I don't know.
Give me the Packers in that game, honestly.
Okay. So they start the season off on a sour note. Then they get another primetime game the following week on Monday Night Football, and they take on Kirk Cousins.
They take on Kirk Cousins. Well, primetime Kirk kind of has struggled over his career versus the Philadelphia Eagles, so I'll take the Eagles in that game.
All right. And then the next week, 1:00 game, they go to New Orleans to take on the Saints.
They go to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Give me the Eagles in that game. I mean, we don't know what the Saints are going to be at all next year, so Eagles should get it done.
All right. And then the following week, they go to Tampa Bay, maybe trying to get some revenge against the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I do think they get some revenge there. Devin White also looking for revenge, so give me the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right. So lost the first game, won the last three. They host the Cleveland Browns the following week.
They host the Cleveland Browns. That's a tough matchup, but give me Jalen Hurts over whatever Cleveland has to offer.
Even Jameis, damn.
Even
that's great.
Jameis. I'm sorry.
All right. And then the following week from that, they go to East Rutherford to take on Tommy DeVito potentially.
Tommy DeVito. If it's Tommy DeVito, they may struggle. However, it's probably going to be Daniel Jones, so give me the Eagles.
All right. And then it is 4:00 game in Paycor Stadium, and they take on Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Yeah, give me the Bengals in that game.
All right. And then they host the recently paid Trevor Lawrence and his locks on Sunday Night Football the following week.
On Sunday Night Football, for some reason, I feel like the Jaguars are going to win. I don't know why, but give me the Jags.
All right. And then the very next week, they go to Jerry World to take on the Cowboys.
Go to Jerry World, and then you had them splitting with the Cowboys, losing that one, so they dropped to 5-4 here.
All right. But luckily for them, schedule gets a little bit easier. They will host the Commanders on Thursday Night Football.
They host the Commanders, and I will have them beating the Commanders in that game, getting back on track.
All right. And then another primetime game as they take on the Rams in SoFi.
In SoFi, yeah, give me Philadelphia over the Rams. Still think they're overall better team, especially with that gaping hole in the middle of the defensive line.
For sure. And then 4:00 game, they go to Baltimore to take on Lamar.
They go to Baltimore to take on Lamar. Great running back matchup at the quarterback and running back positions. So I think A.J. Brown will be the difference in this game. So give me the Eagles.
All right. And then they host Tepperville the week after.
Yeah, if you lose this, someone needs to get fired.
Yeah, no kidding. And then they host the Steelers the following week.
Battle for Pittsburgh. That's a game I feel like the Steelers are going to win. I think they'll be able to run the ball. Steelers should be hitting their groove with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren at that point. So give me the Steelers.
All right. And then the Commanders host the Eagles the following week at 1:00.
And then I believe we had them splitting with the Commanders because they give them a tough time. So they drop down to 9-6.
All right. And then the last two games, Sunday the 29th, they will face the Cowboys in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and we have the Eagles in that game.
All right. And then a flex game, they host Daniel Jones.
Yeah, annihilation. So yeah, that's what I said. I said they'd probably be 11-6, 12-5. And yeah, I think that's a fair prediction for the Eagles. Like, could you win 12 games? Yeah, probably, but I feel like 11 for this team is fair, especially like the year the Chiefs got back to and won the Super Bowl last season when I picked the Chiefs to go 11-6, and I feel like the Eagles aren't going to have the pedal so heavy to the metal like they did when they came out at the beginning of last season. So I think 11-6 is fair.
Yeah, no doubt. And we saw last year how they kind of fell flat. Part of that, we'll see whether or not that was from the Super Bowl hangover or it's them losing the locker room with Nick Sirianni. A lot of question marks with with the Eagles, but I do think that with these predictions here, that they will be the division winner.
All right, and then we have the Giants at 3-14, the Commanders at 6-10-1, the Cowboys at 8-9, and the Philadelphia Eagles at 11-6.
All right, we love it.
And then shifting over to the AFC, it's a weird division because I feel like the Dolphins, again, they should be the best team in the division, but we just don't know what exactly they're going to be. And the Jets have the potential to be the best team in the division, but they seem very dysfunctional at this point, especially with all the Aaron Rodgers drama going on right now. Um, their coach seems like Mr. Clean, seems like he's sputtering a little bit right now. The Bills cut everyone. They signed a wrestler. We don't know what they're doing at this point. And then the Patriots are just kind of sitting there and no one's really talking about the Patriots. They're kind of just in their own little world, like, okay, maybe we'll win 7 games. We could win 9. Maybe we'll only win 4. No one knows.
And nobody cares either because at the end of the day, the spotlight's going to be on the other teams. I think the Jets, if Aaron Rodgers can return to where he was in Green Bay before he got hurt, then I think the Jets have a chance to be really good. They have some really nice talent. I like Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall a lot. So the Jets are one of those weird teams I do buy into a little bit. The Dolphins, I think they'll be just as good as they were last year. So they'll be competitive. And then the Bills, that's another super hard team for me to predict because you have Josh Allen. You drafted Keon Coleman. We don't know how good he'll be. And then just a lot of question marks. So
Yeah.
a lot of question marks overall. I do think those three teams, Bill, Jets, and Dolphins, will be competitive. And the Patriots, who knows?
Yeah, and like for me, it hasn't really set in that Aaron Rodgers is on the Jets because I don't know, he didn't really play at all last year.
Played 3 snaps,
Yeah,
and that was the end of it.
yeah, so like it still hasn't really set in that he is a New York Jet. Do you think he gets hurt again, or do you think he stays healthy with his kind of stem cell psychedelic treatment?
I mean, I hope for the sake of Jets fans that they do because if he got hurt again, especially in game one, like that would be really tough. I think that the thing I'm more worried about is less about him staying healthy and more about is he going to be the Aaron Rodgers that we've seen because he's 40 now. He's entering year 20 and it doesn't seem like he's as committed to the end of to the whole treatment thing that someone like Brady or Drew Brees or these other players have had. So that's what I'm more worried about with him is whether he's committed and whether or not he'll be the same player he was.
Yeah, definitely. And like I feel like he hasn't really cared about winning a Super Bowl over the past few years. I feel like he's more had the mentality like it'd be nice, but like I don't know. I'm still a multi-million dollar athlete. I kind of have that lifestyle here. So let's start out with the Jets because they're kind of just this mystery team looming in the dark. And we will be picking this, assuming that Aaron Rodgers is the starting quarterback here. Unfortunately, they start out game one versus the San Francisco 49ers.
Okay, we're history buffs on the show for a reason. We know Aaron Rodgers versus the 49ers has not been good. I believe he's 1-5 in his career, so that's all I need to say.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers in game one, the regular season period.
Yeah, and also over the last 2 years.
And then after that goes down to Nashville. Hopefully they don't slip on Mayo, but we'll see.
I'd like to say that they should be able to beat the Titans with Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. So they start out 1-1, and then argument becomes who has the better porn mustache. Is it Aaron Rodgers or is it Will Levis, the actual porn star? And then after that, they host the New England Patriots on Thursday Night Football in East Rutherford, New Jersey.
I think they're going to probably split with the Patriots. I'll take them to beat the Patriots this time around.
Okay. So they start out 2-1, not terrible. And they go to Denver, and with Denver, we don't know if it's going to be.
A golfer, a mommy slayer, or Jared Stidham.
Yeah, disappointment to say the least. And if you watched our Broncos preview,
We were nice to them.
we were nice. We were nice. But do you have the Jets winning this?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're 3-1, coming out hot here out of the gate. And then they go to Minnesota to play the Vikings, get the Sauce versus Justin Jefferson matchup.
Yeah, I think this is a super interesting matchup. I will take the Jets. I think the Jets are going to start out hot. I'll take them to beat the Vikings here.
All right. And then after that, they host the Buffalo Bills. And we all saw the fluky game last time versus the Bills.
Yeah, I think that they're going to split it with the Bills and Dolphins. Actually, I think they're going to split with pretty much everyone in this division. So I'm going to take the Bills to win this game.
Okay. So then they go 4-2 here. After the Bills, they go to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers.
See, this is a game where I think the Steelers defense with Cole Holcomb and TJ Watt and all these guys on that team, I think that, oh, and also Pat Queen, let's not forget about him. I think this is a game that the Steelers can win, and I think they beat the Jets.
All right, so reasonable 4-3 for the Jets, and I think that's fair. And then after that, they go to New England to face the Patriots.
Yep, and I do think they get the win here.
Okay. So they're currently 5-3. Then after beating the Patriots, they host the Houston Texans.
Yep, and I think the Texans are going to be the best team in football. So I think that they'll be able to take on the Jets. Let's also not forget that the Jets' offensive line is historically bad. So with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, I don't like their chances.
All right, so now they're 5-4, and then after that, they have to go to Arizona to take on the Cardinals.
I think that's going to be a great game. But I do think they'll beat the Cardinals in this situation.
Okay. And then after that, they host the Indianapolis Colts in New Jersey.
Yep. And at this point, they're 6-4. I think that they lose to the Colts. Anthony Richardson, specimen that he is, I think he can get the win.
All right. And then back-to-back home games, they host Seattle.
And I'll take them to beat Seattle here. Rubbing in the wounds of them finessing them with the Jamal Adams trade.
Okay. And then after that, they go to Miami to play the Dolphins.
And I do think they'll split with the Dolphins, but I will take them to lose to the Dolphins in this game.
Okay. So currently 7-6 right now. Then they have to go to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars.
I'll take them to beat the Jaguars here.
Okay. And then so they're 8-6, teetering on the edge, especially in the AFC. Then they host the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, I think at this point this becomes a coaching matchup, and Sean McVay versus Robert Saleh. I'll take the edge with Sean McVay here.
Okay. So they are 8-7, and then they go to Buffalo to play the Bills, potentially for the division.
And the last time around, I had them losing to the Bills, so I'll have them beating the Bills this time.
Okay. So currently 9-7, and then they host the Dolphins.
Yep, and I had them beating the Dolphins last time, so I'll have them losing to the Dolphins this time.
All right. So yeah, Jets 9-8, exactly where I thought they would be.
Yeah, I think for them, their floor is going to be 8 wins, and I think their ceiling could be as high as honestly 12. But I think realistically, 8 to 11 wins is my window for them. I think that if their highest ceiling that they can be is really, really good and win a playoff game, their floor is missing out on the wild card, honestly.
All right. And then after that, we have them potentially getting into the playoffs, potentially missing the playoffs. Then we have the New England Patriots. This team's kind of a mystery. We have a new head coach, so we'll see what Gerard Mayo is made of this year. And then they also have a rookie quarterback in Drake May. They also drafted another quarterback with the cannon of the arm. Still have Bailey Zappi, and then there's also Jacoby Brissett just kind of lurking there. So I think the Patriots should be better, but you didn't get any receivers, and your number one need is receiver. You didn't want to overpay for Calvin Ridley. You didn't draft anyone of note there. Maybe some of your draft picks hit, but with the history of New England, really haven't drafted that many star receivers in their past. So right now you're currently relying on the Brandon Ayuk sweepstakes.
Yeah, and they did draft 2 rookie wide receivers, but again, it's how successful will they be with that? Well, they start their season off in Cincinnati to take on Joe Burrow. First game potentially for Drake May, but first coaching experience for Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, and I feel like that's just a game the Bengals will lose. It's the first game. It's in September. Bengals play terrible in September. It's a sky is falling moment. So give me the Patriots.
All right. And then they host the Seahawks the following week.
Um, they host the Seahawks. Honestly, New England's a tough place to play. I'll take the Patriots by a coin flip.
Okay. And then they, on Thursday Night Football, will go to East Rutherford to take on the Jets.
And then yeah, so I think you had the Jets beating them twice, so I'll stick with that. And then they fall to 2-1.
And then their schedule gets pretty brutal the next stretch. They go to San Francisco to take on the Niners.
Go to San Francisco. Yeah, give me the Niners all day.
And then they host the Dolphins the following week.
They host the Dolphins. Miami's kind of owned the Patriots over the past few years, so give me the Dolphins.
And then to follow that up, they then host the CJ Stroud led Texans.
Yeah, again, give me the Texans in that game.
And then those Brits down in London will have the Jaguars and Patriots.
I can't pick against the Jaguars in London as much as I'd want the Patriots to win in England. Can't beat Jacksonville in London. Just doesn't happen.
It just doesn't happen. And then they host the Jets the following week.
They host the Jets the following week, and then I think you had the Jets winning both of those games, or did you have them splitting?
I think I had them potentially splitting with them. I think I might have picked them both times.
Okay, so I'll go with that as well. Fall to 2-6.
Yep. So started off hot, struggling now, and then they will go to Tennessee to take on Will Levis.
Go to Tennessee to take on Will Levis. Give me the Titans in that game. Titans are just a better team.
All right. So started off hot. Now they're starting to struggle out the gate. They go to Chicago to take on the Bears.
Yeah, that's a tough matchup. Give me the Bears.
All right. So starting to unravel a bit. And then they host Sean McVay and the Rams.
They host Sean McVay and the Rams. I feel like that'll be a game that the Rams lose, but they really shouldn't. So give me the Patriots.
Okay. And then they go to Miami on Sunday the 24th at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, no, they can't play in Miami.
No,
It just doesn't happen.
it doesn't happen. And then they host the Colts the following week.
Yeah, give me the Colts in that one as well.
And then they take the week off, rest easy for those last 4 games, and they go into Arizona to take on the Patriots. The Cardinals.
The
I'm sorry.
Cardinals. I feel like the Patriots can beat the Cardinals.
Yeah, potentially. I can say that the tickets for these games are extremely cheap. $25.
Yeah, no one wants to watch it. That's why.
Yeah. And then to end the season, they will have a 1 o'clock game against the Bills in Buffalo.
In Buffalo. That just smells Bills choke job, so give me the Patriots.
And then they go they host the Chargers in a to be determined game.
They host the Chargers. Yeah, give me the Patriots. Justin Herbert oddly has struggled versus the Patriots throughout his career. I think that continues.
And then they host the Bills to end the season again.
They host the Bills to end the season. Yeah, the Bills usually lose the first and win the second, so I'll have them splitting with the Patriots.
All right.
All right, so they are 5-12.
5-12. So I think my prediction of the Patriots is I think that they're going to be a good bad team. I think their defense is good enough to win games. Their offense is going to piece things together. I think they're going to be like how the Cardinals were last year, where they lose a lot of games, but they play competitively.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like you can't have a rookie receiver or rookie quarterback without receiver help. So unless you make a trade, the schedule could change. And then Jacoby Brissett, like it'll be fine, but again, you're still going to be struggling to score 20.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with the rookie receivers there. But I think 5-12, 6-11, like 5 to 7 wins is a fair win range for the Patriots. And then we have the Miami Dolphins, which kind of had a really weird offseason where they pretty much signed everyone after letting Christian Wilkins walk, basically signed a defense, and then you sign Odell Beckham Jr. as if you weren't compensating enough for Tua. So now we have Odell, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill to compensate for a guy that you want to pay $50 million.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like they didn't really change all that much for me. Their offense is still going to be just as electric, but they're still limited by their quarterback. And then on the other side, their defense, they signed a lot of players that stand out. But at the end of the day, I don't think their defense is going to be that absurd. So I think they're going to be pretty much the same team they were last year.
Okay. And so let's head into that where they start for the Battle of Florida versus Jacksonville.
And I'll take them to beat Jacksonville to start the season. I think they're going to start off hot.
All right. And then they face the Buffalo Bills in Miami.
And I think they beat the Bills. I think they'll ultimately split with the Bills, but to be determined depending on the schedule.
All right. And then after that, they go to Seattle to play the Seahawks.
Yep. And like I said, I think they do start hot, so I will take them to beat the Seahawks.
Yeah, best September team in the league. And then after that, they host the Tennessee Titans, maybe looking to get some revenge for last time.
Yeah. And I think that after they had that embarrassing loss last year, they go and beat the Titans this time.
Okay. And then they go to New England to pay the Patriots. I had the Patriots losing twice to Miami.
Yeah, I think Miami has owned them historically, so I'm going to put them to beat the Patriots.
All right, 5-0. The Super Bowl talk has started, but after going to New England, they have to go to Indianapolis.
And I think this is where they lose. We like Shane Steichen a lot. We like Anthony Richardson. I think this is when they start to humble themselves.
All right. Then after that, Kyler Murray comes to town.
Yep, and I'll take them to beat the Cardinals.
All right. And after that, they go to Buffalo to play the Bills in November.
And I'll actually have them beating the Bills twice. I think that they're a good enough team. And with how the Bills could be struggling potentially, I'll have them beating them twice.
All right. So starting out 7-1 now. After that, they go to LA to play the Rams.
Yep. And this is where I think the coaching matchup comes down. Sean McVay, I'm taking Sean McVay. This is where I start to think they unravel a little bit.
So 7-2, pretty solid start there. And then after that, they host the gritty Raiders.
Yeah, and I think the Raiders can push them around. I think if they can get pressure on Tua, then the Raiders could upset them there.
Okay, so now they're 7-3, and thankfully they host the Patriots the very next week.
Yep, and they get the win there.
All right, so 8-3. They go to Green Bay to face the Packers in an interesting matchup.
What time is it?
It's a night game.
Night game. Ooh, prime time potentially. I'm going to take the Packers here.
Packers. Okay, yeah. Jordan Love's going to show how much better he is than Tua.
Yep.
And then after that, they host the Jets.
Yep, and I'll take them to beat the Jets here. I think
right.
they split potentially.
So 9-4. Then they go to Houston.
They don't beat the Houston Texans.
All right. 9-5. They host the San Francisco 49ers.
They don't beat the 49ers either.
Okay. So now they're 9-6, kind of questioning life a little bit, and they go to Cleveland to face the Browns.
And Cleveland could really toughen them out. I think
in December.
In December, Myles Garrett, I don't want to trust him. So yeah, I think they fall to the Browns.
Okay. So after a hot start, struggling here, 9-7, then they host the Jets and potentially a division clinching game.
Yeah, I had them beating the Jets last time. I'll have the Jets beating them this time.
Wow, so Miami goes 9-8.
Yeah. Tough play. So ultimately the last game could be what decides the division, it sounds like, for Jets and Dolphins.
Yeah, because they would both be 9-8. So yeah, we could have a Raiders and Chargers situation.
Yeah. I honestly think the Dolphins might be a little better than what I gave them to. I think 10-7 is probably where I'd have them. 10-7, 11-6, but ultimately I feel like I don't know if it's just me, but the last half of the season is brutal for them. When it's the Texans, the Niners, the Bills, the Jets, the Rams, the Packers, like there's 6 games where I don't feel confident in them and really in any of those matchups.
Yeah, especially they're not really a November or December team, so can definitely see them falling in some of those games. Maybe you beat San Francisco if Ayuk isn't there, but yeah, that's definitely a tough schedule for Miami, especially for a team that didn't even win their division last year.
Yeah, and we also saw them last year. They started off 7-4 and ended I think they pretty much fell from grace from last year. They lost 5 of the last 7 games.
Yeah, exactly. And same exact thing happening here. You start out 8-3, then you finish 9-8.
Yeah. Potentially could lose their job, Mr. Mike McDaniel. But then the last team we have is the Buffalo Bills. I have their schedule pulled up here. When I say Buffalo Bills, what are you thinking?
Who's left? It's like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meme with Will Smith, and Josh Allen's just looking around like, okay. I don't have Stephon Diggs. Dawson Knox is an old but injured tight end. Dalton Kincaid is a bright spot, but we have Von Miller who can't stay healthy, and then we had to cut everyone else on our defense. Some of those players going to Miami. Yeah, Josh Allen's regressed every single year outside of Brian Daboll, and I think that continues because we have seen him without Stephon Diggs, and we've seen him with Stephon Diggs, and I don't think his drop off will be as bad as pre Stephon Diggs, but I don't think it's gonna be great either.
Yeah. And the way they filled his shoes were signing Curtis Samuel, drafting Keon Coleman, and Khalil Shakur another year older.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir another year older, and just someone who's like, fine, he's
Solid.
fine. Curtis Samuel, fine, but they don't have a dynamic weapon on offense. I know they're trying to run the ball a little bit more, but like at the same time, how much punishment can Josh Allen keep taking? So I think this is going to be kind of soul searching year for the Buffalo Bills, and Sean McDermott finally gets outed.
Okay. Well, they start their season in Arizona. Oh, I'm sorry. They host Arizona week 1.
Ooh, yeah. One of the best games over the past few years in the NFL was Arizona versus Buffalo. Maserati, Marv, and Kyler. Give me the Cardinals.
Okay. Upset. And then Thursday night football the following week, Dolphins and Bills.
Dolphins and Bills. And yeah, give me Miami in that game. They've been able to take care of business versus the Bills early in the season.
All right. And then they have one of those weird times where there's 2 Monday night games. They have them hosting the Jaguars.
They're hosting the Jaguars. Give me the Jaguars in that game.
Okay. And then they have them going to Baltimore.
To Baltimore. Yeah, again, I have to take Baltimore.
All right. So they are starting off
0-4.
0-4. And it doesn't get easier for them because they then go to the Texans.
They go to the Texans again. No shot.
All
Stephon Diggs potentially goes for 200 yards in that game.
Yeah, revenge game for them.
All right.
And then New Jersey Jets call their name on Monday Night Football. They take on Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and we saw what happened last time on Monday Night Football. So, yeah, I have to go with the Jets here.
Okay. And then they host Will Levis and the Titans.
Okay, I'll give you a break. You're hosting the Titans. Titans will be an up and down team. They may struggle and lose against some teams that they shouldn't, so I'll have the Bills picking up their first win here.
At 1-6. And then the next week they go to Seattle.
They go to Seattle. Yeah, I think Josh Allen can win this game. Starting to get his mojo back. This is going to be the time where he's like, all right, I guess I have to do this all myself here, and puts the team on his back.
All right. And then the next week they host the Miami Dolphins.
They host the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, the Dolphins beating them twice, so I'll stick with that.
All right. And then this next stretch is pretty tough for them. They go to Indianapolis.
Yeah, the Colts in that one.
All right. And then could be game of the year potentially. They host Patrick Mahomes. Always a great game.
Game of the year potentially, yeah. Yeah, at this point the Chiefs feel bad for the Bills. The Bills have had some success over the Chiefs in the regular season, so I will take the Bills in that game.
Very nice of you.
I'll let them win.
Yeah. And then they host the 49ers the following week on Sunday Night Football.
No shot.
This is also following a bye week. And then they go to LA to face the Rams.
I'll take the Bills in that game.
All right.
I think Josh Allen can run all over them without Aaron Donald.
For sure. And then the next week, they go to Detroit to take on Marshall Mathers and the Lions.
Yeah. Josh Allen diss track coming in hot. Might potentially make Josh Allen switch to volleyball, so I'll take the Lions.
All right. And then to end the season, bunch of AFC East matchups. They host the Patriots.
They host the Patriots. Yeah, I had the Patriots winning that game.
All right. And then they host the Jets.
I'll have them beating the Jets.
All right. And then they end the season with the Patriots on a flex game.
I'll have them beating the Patriots.
All right.
So they are 6-11.
They're 6-11 Bills.
6-11 Bills. Like, honestly, like, who's on the team at this point? Like, people will say it's crazy, but like at the same time, it's like your defense is going to be questionable at best. You're relying on who at wide receiver? Kind of a rookie. You're putting all of that on him. Potentially, you run the ball. Maybe you get 7 or 8 wins, but I think you're in the 6 to 8 win range here, and you could potentially go 6-11 or 8-9 would be probably the best case scenario.
Yeah, I see them at 8-9. I think that they'll be competing for the wild card, but they end up falling short. I think they will miss the playoffs this year, but ultimately, I think it's going to be a tough season for them. They won their division after rallying. We saw that they fell to 5-6 last year, and they rallied off a bunch of wins against a really tough schedule. But can they do that again without Stephon Diggs is the question. So
Yeah.
that's really the question to be had. So that's our schedule. We have how does the AFC East break down?
Yeah, so AFC East breaks down with the Patriots at 5-12, the Bills at 6-11, and the Dolphins and the Jets tied at 9-8.
Wow, there it is. So our AFC East previews. Let me know what you think of that in the comment section below. But most importantly of all, stay brick.